and welcome. I will be your MC for the Ashoka U Exchange Big Idea Talks. These short sessions each present a new way of thinking about traditional societal structures or a framework that's transforming higher education and community. For our first Big Idea Talk, I'm pleased to introduce Hilary Scanlon, founder and CEO of Still Solutions.
All right. Can you just give me a confirmation that you can hear me? A verbal confirmation?
We can hear you.
Perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. So disability is one of the only identities that we will all experience at some point in our lives. Let that sink in. It's one of the only marginalized identities that we will all experience. Certainly the types of disabilities and the causes and timeframes of these disabilities will vary, but disability is simply part of the human experience. So why is our environment and society in general so inaccessible to people with disabilities? Hopefully this talk will provide some insight and offer some solutions. 5 years ago, I suddenly and unexpectedly lost my vision. Prior to losing my vision, I also had no idea how inaccessible our world was to people with disabilities. And this was largely because I didn't need to. I was 20 years old and living my life as a university student. I could safely walk to school regardless of the weather. I could go grocery shopping or go to the mall on a whim. Basically, I didn't have to plan my day around travel or navigation or general safety. When I lost my vision, I was immediately thrown into a world that was not built for people like me. And the sad thing was, I had lived alongside of this world for my entire life, and I had no idea that it existed until I needed to. Today, I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, also commonly known as Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I run a social enterprise called Still Solutions, and we work to bridge the gap between sustainability and accessibility by making waste disposal more accessible to people of all abilities. Today, however, I'm not talking about the importance of making sustainability more inclusive, accessible, and just. Today, I want to talk to you about a brand new topic, COVID-19. Now, of course, I'm joking. The pandemic has been on everyone's mind nonstop for the past year. However, I want to invite you to consider the pandemic through a different lens. When the world went into quarantine last year, understandably, there was panic and fear about how we would adapt to this new and hopefully temporary lifestyle. At an institutional level, companies with physical office spaces wondered how they would survive if employees were no longer able to come into work. Many post-secondary institutions similarly wondered how they would convert all of their programs to e-learning modules. On an individual level, people began panicking about grocery shopping. Stockpiling toilet paper became such an issue that I finally just gave up and bought a bidet. Would recommend, by the way. Many of us saw these experiences as barriers to participating within society. But these are barriers that people with disabilities have been asking us to pay attention to for decades. Not the toilet paper, by the way. Similar to how I did not recognize the inaccessibility of our environment until I lost my vision, billions of people were unable to recognize the inaccessibility of our environment until the pandemic hit. I want to explore how we can leverage the experiences that we have gained during the pandemic to make the world more accessible and inclusive. I firmly believe that one of the worst things that we can do is go back to normal. Normal was ignorant, closed-minded, and oppressive. Normal was rooted in a culture that valued tradition and comfort over progress. Last year, we moved into quarantine. Does everyone remember the experience of scrambling to move workplaces, education, etc. online? I remember that we took immediate action and found solutions. This surge of innovation was fueled by an emergency, but it was also fueled by the fact that the majority of the population was now experiencing discomfort in their new environment. The world and its institutions were not built to accommodate those who work and learn from home. This is purposeful because physical spaces have traditionally served the needs of the powerful and the privileged. So when those spaces were no longer available, We immediately sought out new ways of engaging with one another. This is amazing as it demonstrates our collective ability to adapt, to change, and to design solutions that serve the majority rather than the few. COVID-19, however, was not the original trigger for the work from home movement. Disability activists have been calling for this for decades. And for decades, they were denied and told that there are too many distractions at home. They wouldn't be as productive. They won't get the same experience as their colleagues. And my personal favorite, we need to see you every day to make sure that you're working. What workplaces and educational institutions overlooked is that a person with anxiety, for instance, may be more productive in a quiet, familiar environment. An individual who uses a wheelchair may be literally unable to access their office if their building is not equipped with an elevator. For others, such as myself, simply traveling to work or to school is hazardous. When we moved online, we removed barriers for a huge portion of the population and opened the door for millions of people with disabilities to seek meaningful employment and education opportunities. We cannot close this door when the pandemic ends. On a more individual level, the pandemic also drew attention to the ways in which we move and travel. As someone who is blind, I largely rely on my sense of touch to navigate through and to understand the world. The pandemic made this prohibitive. Prior to the pandemic, if I were to go grocery shopping, my guide dog would walk down various aisles, and I would touch the products on the shelves to understand not only what type of product I was feeling, but to also orient myself within the store. During COVID-19, however, if I were to go grocery shopping, I would be asked to use hand sanitizer located over there, which is, by the way, the worst set of directions you can give a blind person, just a heads up. My guide dog, as cute as she is, Margarita, would then unknowingly walk down aisles in the wrong direction as I would try and guess which section of the store I was in. While I can and have worn gloves to protect myself, I can't read Braille through gloves, which is also a tool that really helps me navigate through different environments. If I managed to find some groceries, I would then go to the cash, and both my guide dog and I would get confused by the massive line of shoppers standing 6 feet apart. The result was that shopping for my basic needs was now inaccessible and unsafe. Thankfully, a lot of grocery stores reacted to some of these barriers by offering some solutions. For example, a number of stores let seniors and people with disabilities shop during the first hour of opening to ensure that the store was as clean and as safe as possible. A number of stores also began offering or expanding pickup and delivery services. These actions made the shopping experience more accessible to people with disabilities. It also made the experience safer and more accessible to all community members. This particular example is demonstrative of the ways in which the private sector has the ability to react and to adapt its space and practices according to the needs of the broader community. Again, while disability activists have been calling for similar accommodations for decades, it was not until the privileged and powerful members of societies needed and demanded action that change occurred. Not only did the reactions of those in the private sector translate into more inclusive and accessible spaces, it also made these companies more profitable as they opened up their product and service offerings to a much wider percentage of the population. In Canada, 22% of our population over the age of 15 identifies as having a disability. So that just shows the impact that this can really have. So where should we go from here? A recent study found that companies reported lower levels of innovation in the last year as they worked through COVID-19. While I believe that some companies may perceive this to be true, I don't believe that it is. COVID-19 has led to one of the most challenging, innovative, and creative eras of my lifetime. And this is because survival necessitates innovation. Every day, people with disabilities have to develop innovative solutions that enable them to survive and thrive within a society that was not made for them. At the beginning of this talk, I mentioned that we will all experience disability at some point in our lives. So now that we are equipped with this knowledge of our potential to enact change and to remove barriers in a variety of sectors, we need to hold strong and be careful not to fall back into the mindset that things should go back to normal. Normal is not an option. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this talk. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, but otherwise I look forward to connecting with you all throughout the conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.